Joining us now, Trump administration senior advisor for the U.S. Agency for Global Media, the indomitable Kari Lake. Kari, I want to get to all the different things going on Capitol Hill and how that's affecting the administration. But first, maybe just give us an update how things are going with your current job. We know there are a lot of changes there, and we'd be very interested in hearing them from your perspective.
Well, I'm very thankful to President Trump for naming me a senior advisor over U.S. Agency for Global Media. That's the agency that oversees Office of Cuba Broadcasting and Voice of America, as well as grantees like Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Asia, Middle Eastern Broadcasting Network, and a couple of others as well. And we are working really hard to implement the president's executive order to reduce the scope and scale of the federal bureaucracy. And of course, we're getting a lot of fight back, as you're seeing lawsuits and all of that. If you're watching at home of what President Trump is doing to try to scale back this out of control federal government and bureaucracy, you notice there's some fight back. And so we're getting that in our agency as well. I think we're up to 6 lawsuits that we're facing, all in as we're trying to make sure that the American taxpayers' money is being wisely and soundly spent. And there's just a big resistance to that in Washington, D.C. But we don't give up easily. We will continue to push forward. And I agree, and I know that hundreds of millions of Americans agree that our government has gotten too big, and the survival of our republic depends on us shrinking it down. And so we're doing just that. We're bringing it down to its statutory minimum. And in an effort of doing that, we're getting quite a bit of resistance.
I bet there are also people who are inspired, though, that the core mission will be able to be executed without all the distractions and all the waste. I mean, the rabble-rousers in some of these government agencies seem to be getting all the attention, filing the lawsuits, having their protests and rallies. But I've also heard from people in these agencies who say, finally, there is an application of merit, and I'm going to have the opportunity to do the real work. Are you finding some of those hardworking, patriotic Americans who are excited about our new golden age?
Yeah, there are some people, and they've recognized that there's been a lot of corruption and mismanagement and, frankly, questionable dealings in the agency that I oversee. They've recognized that for a long time, but there was nowhere to go with those complaints, and they watched as it just spiraled further and further into a rot. And frankly, it's a very corrupt agency, I've learned since I've been here. We've got national security issues. You know, you can look at the product that's been going out and you'll hear a lot of complaints. Some people have said, look, I've seen Marxist programming going out. I've seen anti-American programming going out. I've seen programming that supports our adversaries. Why is the American taxpayer paying for that? We haven't even gotten into the editorial part of what's happening. We're right now looking at how this agency is being run, and I can tell you, I've been shocked and horrified by the mismanagement and the misspending of taxpayer dollars. So eventually we'll get into looking at the editorial side of it, but right now, pretty much the majority of the people are on paid administrative leave while we sort things out and try to get a handle on it. And as President Trump has asked us, bring it down to its statutory minimum. You know how things go in D.C., Matt. Once something is started up, they never want to scale it back down. Once the mission has been accomplished, they never want to say, okay, we accomplished what we set out to do. Now we can close up shop or we can change direction. They don't do that. They just keep growing bigger and bigger and bigger. President Trump has asked us to scale it way back down to what is only required by law and nothing more.
I do want to ask you just one question about the editorial component of this very important job. And I won't ask you to go through the whole program wheel, but maybe just how do you want people to feel throughout the world after they've interacted with this content that you're going to be central to creating and overseeing?
Well, back when it began, 83 years ago, Voice of America was really a beacon of light and hope and freedom. And it was built up to tear down Nazism, and eventually it helped us, tear down communism as well in other countries, and so and the Cold War and things like that. But it's gotten so far away from that mission and telling America's story, telling the story of freedom and liberty. And that's not acceptable. It used to be under the State Department. And when it was under the State Department, it stuck in line more closely with what our diplomatic mission was. And now it's become its own agency under U.S. Agency for Global Media. I think with the way it's set up right now, it's really difficult to get programming that aligns with American values. And that's the sad part of it, to think that a hardworking trucker working the overnight shift in Arizona, or a farmer in Wisconsin or Iowa, or somebody who's working two jobs to make ends meet, or a student somewhere in, you name the state, Florida, is having to foot the bill for even one report that might go out across the globe that's anti-American, is unacceptable. Right now in my position, I don't have control over the editorial process, but eventually I'd like to get in there and get into that role and do something about it, so that we're making sure that we are in line with what we're pushing diplomatically, and we're pushing America's story out. It's unacceptable that we would see a story that aligns with the CCP, or a story that aligns with the Iranian regime, or a story that is tearing down our country abroad.
Yeah, I think we've got a great story to tell. It's actually one of the best in all of humanity, and what a great thing that you'll have the opportunity to right-size that agency and get them going in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sad that we've gotten so far from
weird.
telling that story.
Yeah, and it's one that should make us all excited to go and share it and inspire others. I do want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing happen on Capitol Hill. You're a veteran of very tough campaigns. You're a close observer of politics. And just at a macro level, it seems like there's a lack of cooperative energy, right? A lot of the energy that we are seeing, it's going into destructive things like tearing down Tesla charging stations, or waving a cane in President Trump's face, or Cory Booker proving that he can speak for an entire day. And just as someone now working to try to execute the mission, I wonder what you think would be the type of productive, positive, pro-America cooperation that we could see on Capitol Hill to actually bring the country together.
If you think about it, what President Trump is pushing, and he's not a candidate right now. He's the president of the United States. He's pushing to help rebuild the middle class. You would think that people on the left want to get behind that. He's pushing to rebuild manufacturing in this country. He wants to bring taxes down, to take the tax burden off of the American people. After all, for the last, 60 plus days, we've been watching as the waste in D.C. has been exposed, the waste of our hard-earned tax dollars. You would think that the folks in the Democrat Party want to jump in and be involved in this success that we're going to be having, and that we're having as a country. And one thing I do know about President Trump is I think he'd welcome people in with open arms. I mean, we're just seeing Bill Maher show up. Someone's been a critic of President Trump's for a long, long time. Has said some very nasty things about Bill Maher. Was invited to the White House to have dinner with the president. President Trump used to be a Democrat. This isn't about Democrat Republican anymore. It's about, can we save our country? And I know President Trump's working really hard to do that. He wants to see fair trade. Somebody called it a trade war. I said, no. We've been told we have fair trade for a long time, and we don't. America's been getting the worst of it for far too long. These trade agreements have been signed, and they try to tell us it's good for us, and it's actually really bad for America. And the president is evening and leveling the playing field. So I would hope that the Democrats would recognize that we are going into a historic period of rebirth for our country. We're going into the golden era, as President Trump calls it. And we want all Americans to be part of this. It's going to be so much easier. And their only hope really for that party, which has been about some pretty difficult things and tough, bad decisions, to come back around, is to get involved and be a part of the solution here, not part of the problem. Besides, most of my people that I know who have a Tesla, many of my friends who have Teslas, a few of them are Republicans, a lot of them are Democrats. So when a Democrat lashes out and attacks a Tesla vehicle, there's a really good chance they're attacking a vehicle of somebody who is also a Democrat who might be driving that vehicle.
It is so silly, and we hope it ends soon. And those were very wise words that we hope permeate the body politic. Kari Lake, thanks so much for rejoining us on the program.
Thank you.